Hello, and welcome to our weekly dialogue with Helga Zepp Dec. She's the founder and chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. Today is December 26, 2024. I'm Harley Schlanger, and I'll be your host. You can email your questions and comments for Helga to questions@schillerinstitute.org, or you can post them on the chat page. So, Helga, the Christmas truce proposed by Hungary's President Orban was rejected by Zelensky. And as a result, the war is continuing in Ukraine while the Israeli army is continuing an offensive, which looks like they're in a bloody rush to consolidate a greater Israel. Yet there have been some positive diplomatic developments, which we'll discuss today, for example, between China and Japan and Russia and Pakistan. But I'd like to start with the existential danger from the Anglo-American war drive. I've received several questions asking if you really think the neocons are crazy enough to try to provoke or to launch a nuclear war.
Well, let me first wish all of you a Merry Christmas, because here in Europe we still have a second day of Christmas, unlike in the United States. But, one should have the Christmas spirit still, because, also Pope Francis in his annual or Christmas Orbi et Orbi message emphasized very much the question of peace, dialogue, conflict resolution only through dialogue and negotiations. And he announced that 2025 is going to be a jubilee year, which according to the Christian faith should mean that a lot of wrongs should be corrected, debt should be forgiven, other conflicts should be resolved. And, while that seems like a chance of a snowflake in hell under the present circumstances, I'm sort of in between. On the one side, it is no question that what we have been saying in the last several broadcasts, that the weeks until Trump gets into the White House, in my view and other people's view, will be the most dangerous period in history ever, and that includes the Cuban Missile Crisis, for the very simple reason that despite the fact that Trump has surrounded himself with a lot of neocons who all will have posts in his administration, nevertheless, from the standpoint of the Wall Street and the City of London military-industrial complex, Trump has this quality of relative unpredictability, and he has made so many contradictory statements that one cannot be sure what does he mean. Does he mean the United States and China together can solve all problems, or does he think that nice Chinese, working on the Panama Canal should be kicked out because that's, Americans' property? I mean, also the announcement that he wants to basically buy up or gobble up Greenland, Panama Canal, Greenland, tariffs against BRICS countries. I think there are so many warning signals that one cannot be sure what this administration will be. On the other side, he has also stated that he does want to end the wars. It's really very difficult to judge, but I think nevertheless that slight margin of uncertainty is too much for the oligarchy, who see that their system is clearly crumbling. And, while the new system in the form of the BRICS plus the SCO, the Eurasian Economic Union, ASEAN, these countries are all trying to build a system. And if that new system is against the United States or cooperates with the United States, is not the fault of these countries. It is entirely the attitude of the United States and European nations, because if they would stretch out the hand and say, let's cooperate, the whole world would be, with a full relief and do so. So anyway, so we will go into this extremely dangerous period where, something could happen. And, unfortunately, Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov's Christmas press conference, where he again, reiterated that it is not Russia which is threatening nuclear war, that Russia at no point started this debate, that indeed Putin in 21 had reiterated the famous saying between Reagan and Gorbachev from 1987, that a nuclear war cannot be won and therefore should never be started. That is what Putin insisted, that the G5, the permanent UN security members, they reiterated, and they did. But naturally, other statements were made, and the American doctrine has been all along US primacy, and the US leadership role in the United States. And Rear Admiral Thomas Buchanan had said in the CSIS meeting in November in Washington, that the United States regards it as legitimate to, even use nuclear weapons to maintain that hegemonic position. And that puts us in immediate danger, because, the escalation we have seen in the recent period, the ever more powerful weapons being delivered to Ukraine at their disposal, ATACMS, deep into the Russian territory. And even after the Russians used the Oreshnik missile, which is a game changer, and all the Western propaganda to try to say, oh, there is really nothing new about this missile, is just not true. I think the Russians have made a strategic surprise with developing this medium range missile, which can go at Mach 10 or even Mach 11 and is not interceptable. It can reach every part in Europe. It can reach Guam. It can reach the west coast of the United States. And, it's that we are at all in this area, it shows you that the Western establishments, it is hair-raising that they seem to be completely unable to review their policies, realize that they are not functioning, and start a discussion expressing a willingness to correct it. But you don't see any sign of that. And I think that is the reason why we have never been in such a mortal danger than now. And that's why people really must express their absolute determination to fight for peace as they have never done before.
We're listening to Helga Zepp Dec, the chairwoman of the Schiller Institute. And Helga, last webcast, there was a question about the political crises in Japan and South Korea. And the question was, were these related to a backlash against global NATO? Well, the same questioner today asked if the Japan-China meeting in Beijing on Christmas Day means the Japanese recognize the danger they face if they become part of a global NATO. And he also asked, isn't trade with China important for Japan?
Well, obviously, I think it is a very promising sign, because the two foreign ministers met over Christmas in Beijing, as you said, and concluded very far-ranging agreements, student exchange, education exchange, such extremely important topics like, preserving and furthering the classic tradition of the other. And, they all come essentially from a Confucian background, but nevertheless, Japan and China had quite a different policy and tradition. So therefore, if they start to communicate on that level, it is clearly a sign of hope. And, I think it is definitely one of the better news, because global NATO is just an abomination. And the continuous insistence of the United States that they can sell weapons to Taiwan, then an attempted coup in South Korea. I think it's extremely important, and I can only hope that this will be the beginning of other nations in the Pacific going in the same direction likewise.
Now, again, since our last webcast, there have been dramatic developments in Germany. The government of Chancellor Scholz, or Scholz's chancellorship, was ended in a vote of no confidence, and there's a date for an election on February 23rd. Now, there's a question that came in, given growing concern about German complicity in a NATO war against Russia, do you think the people will elect a war hawk like Friedrich Merz? Haven't they learned that wars are not very helpful to Germany?
Well, in the polls right now, the election result is open. It's almost 2 months ahead, and in that period can happen a lot. Remember that the election in Germany is on February 23rd, but on January 20th, Trump moves into the White House, and he will do some dramatic things. One doesn't know exactly what it will be, but it will be dramatic, and that will have an impact on the German election. Now, I think that there is, you wouldn't notice it if you look at the mainstream media, but I have come to the conclusion that there is an underground current right now in Germany developing, which I have never seen in my political life ever. And that is that more and more people speak out, basically say that neither the United States and Germany have the same security or economic interest, but also not Germany and the EU, that the EU, by following blindly whatever Washington and London dictate, is trampling on the interest of Germany. Then the unbelievable statements by Ursula von der Leyen that US LNG gas would be so much cheaper than Russian gas. I mean, this woman obviously thinks that all the people in Europe are complete morons and can't read or write, and the arrogance of the establishment is so unbelievable. And for example, the background discussions about the foreign minister of Germany, Frau Baerbock. I mean, people are really, talking about this woman as the worst abomination which ever happened. And there is a groundswell. There are now many blogs, platforms emerging on YouTube and other social media. And, there is a general recognition that we are in front of a break. I don't think that these channels have come to the necessary strategic comprehension yet of understanding the deeper reasons, the collapse of the financial system, the absolute need to establish a new system based on physical principles, because the whole drama comes from the fact that the paradigm shift in the West, which started in August 71, when Nixon went to the flexible exchange rates and started this process of money makes money, profit maximization, no matter what, which was recognized by my late husband Lyndon LaRouche as an absolute game changer at the time. And now we are at the moment where more than 50 years after that paradigm shift occurred, neglecting physical production, favoring speculation, maximization of profit, that rope has come to an end, because now the West is sitting on 2 quadrillion outstanding derivatives. The United States alone, I think they have by now 33 or 34 trillion government debt, unpayable. And since they are not doing anything to counter that, you don't see that all of a sudden in the EU or in America there would be a massive investment program in infrastructure, in city building, in new industries, new cities. Nothing of that sort. What you see instead is more military production, more weapons, more and naturally that brings a lot of profit in the short term for those who have the shares in these weapon firms. But from an economic standpoint, investment in military production is an utter complete waste. And even the famous spillover effect of military inventions into the civilian economy is absolutely negligible, because there is no such effort being made to transfer technologies, and the R&D is also not doing so well, as we can see in the new arms race between the United States and Russia, and by that, also China and other countries who are allied with Russia. So I think that we are in a situation where I think everything really depends on the people recognizing the war danger and come out in full force, voting against any party who is for Taurus, who is for ATACMS, who is for continuation of these conflicts. And in Germany, there are actually at least three parties. One is the AfD, one is the BSW, Wagenknecht Party, and actually the Solidarity Movement, the BÜSO Party, which I'm heading. And we have a very clear position against the war. Now, people say that, since nobody wants to make a coalition with the AfD, however, Weidel is now ahead in the polls as compared to Merz. If there would be a direct election for the chancellor, I think Merz is several points behind Weidel. And under very dramatic conditions, this could even become bigger. Also, it is not unthinkable that the attitude of not ever making a coalition with the AfD under dramatic conditions could also change. So, given the fact that the so-called established parties, everything from the streetlight coalition parties to the potential now CDU, CSU plus FDP plus Greens, would be a worsening of the policies we had with Scholz. So I can only say, any vote which votes out these people is a vote for peace and a vote for the existence of Germany.
You mentioned the comments about Baerbock. My personal favorite as the worst candidate ever is Habeck, the Green candidate for chancellor, who made an idiotic comment that by moving to solar and wind, Germany's protecting its energy infrastructure. Now, you did bring up the economy and especially the post-1971 period, the work of your husband. We have a question from a blogger referring to the fight over the continuing resolution in the U.S. Congress to have a budget which deals with the growing deficit. Now, he writes, it seems that the U.S. establishment has only two approaches to dealing with the growing government debt. The first is the continuing resolution, which includes more funny money as bailouts, or secondly, committing drastic cuts in spending. Neither, in my opinion, is sustainable. What is the LaRouche approach?
Well, the LaRouche approach is to basically go for a global Glass-Steagall. That is because you cannot solve the problem by simply making certain measures in one country, because the international financial system is so interwoven. So ideally, there would be a weekend, a decision prepared maybe carefully through diplomatic channels. And, in all major countries of the Atlantic system, you would have a banking holiday. A Glass-Steagall would be implemented, which means, the commercial banks would be under government protection because they have to continue lending to, industry, agriculture, and trade. But the investment banks would be told that they have to bring their books in order on their own without payment from the taxpayer or some other bailout scheme. And if their books are in the red and they can't remedy it, then maybe they have to close down because they're really not needed. That's one of the big illusions about the modern monetary theory. And then naturally, the next step would be that each country must immediately create a national bank, that the power of credit generation has to go back under the sovereign control of the people, that is in the United States, the Congress, this national bank in every country. They would have agreements among themselves for long-term financing, for basically clearing houses to balance differences in economic strengths of the different countries and different properties. And then you would create a new credit system. And if that approach would be done according to the same principles like Roosevelt's Reconstruction Finance Corporation, the Kreditanstalt für Wiederaufbau after the Second World War in Germany, the Meiji Restoration in Japan, the Gaullist policy of basically a form of also dirigist economics. So you have traditions in all of these, many of these countries one could refer back to, so that people would not get all hysterical and say this is a revolution, because it's not. It's just basically clearing the financial system of this unbelievable speculative bubble which is suffocating the real production. And then if there would be at the same time a communication with the BRICS, there could be an immediate cooperation with the NDB, with the AIIB, with the New Development, with the New Silk Road Fund and similar institutions. And maybe it would be a short period of uncertainty, but if it would be combined with a clear declaration along the lines what I have proposed in my 10 principles for a new security and development architecture, where the 4 programs or the 4 points of LaRouche are one essential element, it would be easy to remedy. And it would naturally mean to go into a new paradigm, to stop with the confrontation and move to a system of cooperation, a new security and development architecture which takes into account the interest of every country, indivisible security, because if you don't have that, it doesn't function. So, it may look like a tall order, but is it really a tall order as compared to a nuclear war and the annihilation of the human species? I don't think so.
Well, Helga, I just got a text message saying, wait a second, did you say there are 3 parties? The Buzo Solidarity Party? Does that mean Helga's a candidate? And I live in Berlin. Will I be able to vote for you?
Well, I hope I will be a candidate. It is right now an enormous struggle because, the shortness of the time, basically from the 16th of December, the number of signatures which have to be gathered by parties which are not yet in the parliament is enormous. It's more than 2,000 for the slate of a state and 200 more for each direct candidate. But in reality, one has to collect always, a significant amount more because of possible invalid signatures. So we are right now engaged in a tremendous battle to gather these signatures. The weather doesn't help. The holiday period doesn't help. But we are determined to do everything in our power to reach these signatures by January 20th. So if you are sitting in Berlin, then the most obvious thing is join our efforts to collect signatures. And also then, you do the best thing you can do for Germany under these conditions. Because, both in the AfD and in the BSV, there are many good people and they have good points. But the reason why the Buzo is campaigning nevertheless, despite the fact that we are naturally small, is because we are a factory of ideas which are absolutely necessary in terms of where are the strategic solutions, what issues must be tackled. And I can only again say, please look at the 10 principles I suggested already more than 2 years ago, but they are still absolutely valid as a starting point of such a transformation. So please join us in Berlin.
Well, I know the person who sent that, and I'll make sure that he does. Now, you mentioned the Factory of Ideas. People can go to the LaRoucheOrganization.com or the SchillerInstitute.com. On the Schiller Institute, you'll find the 10 principles of Helga, and I think that's a fine document as a campaign statement. Now, also, Helga, the International Peace Coalition, I presume, will be meeting again with a Zoom call tomorrow. Can you say something about that?
Yes, I don't know yet the exact list of speakers because, I was a little bit busy with Christmas, which I think is also a good thing. But I know we have been trying to get speakers from Southwest Asia, where, I didn't talk about it now, but the situation is absolutely horrendous. The genocide in Gaza is fully escalating. It is unbelievable that the world seems to be unable to stop this, which is, it's beyond heartbreaking. It's mind-boggling. It's the West will never recover from this. It's not just that the Palestinians are being slaughtered and the children are dying. There was a poll, which said that 95% of the children expect to die soon, and 50 think it should happen as quickly as possible because they can't bear it anymore. And I think that it's not just what is happening now in Syria and West Bank and Lebanon and the whole region, but the West's indifference, the West's tolerance of what is happening there without intervening to stop it. I think this is a stain. I cannot imagine that the West will be in a position to get rid of that in the foreseeable future unless they completely change the leadership of the countries who are responsible for condoning this genocide. And I think in the future world order, if you think of how people were thinking about what happened in Germany in the 12 years of National Socialism and how long it took for Germany to, sort of be respected again, I think something similar is happening, because if the West tolerates what is going on right now, this will not be forgotten in the eyes of the rest of the world. So that will be for sure a topic. Naturally, the immediate war danger, because Southwest Asia also has the potential to expand to a regional and even global war. And for sure, we will talk about the post-Oreshnik situation in Ukraine and beyond. So please come to this program, because it's a growing movement and we have to strengthen it to make its voice heard loud and clear until the peace movement is stronger than the warmongers.
And that's at 11 a.m. Eastern Time tomorrow, Friday. Helga, thanks very much for taking time on the second day of Christmas to join us. And hopefully we'll see you tomorrow. And probably the next time we talk in a webcast will be next year. So Happy New Year as well.
Well, have a good Christmas and a good New Year, and have a whole year.